Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Supercharging Your Oracle Database Workloads. Today's event is brought to you by Nutanix and produced by Actual Tech Media. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is David Davis, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I'm a partner at Actual Tech Media, and I'm just happy to have you on. It's going to be a great event. I'll introduce you to our presenter here in just a moment. Before we do, I want to point out that we want this to be an educational event, so we encourage you to use the questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel as much as you'd like. We'll be answering those questions throughout the event electronically. We have experts from Nutanix available to answer those questions, so please answer the question, or please ask questions during the event. Feel free to do that, and we'll queue up the best questions for a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the event, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Also for our $300 Tango gift card drawing that we'll announce at the end of today's event. And then I also want to point out that we have a cool handout available for download there in the GoToWebinar control panel. This is a PDF solutions brief. It's entitled Unlocking the Value of Your Data with Simplified Data Management. And it has some additional information and statistics that you will want to check out. So make sure that you download that. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you to today's presenter. That is Mr. Chris Papp, Solutions Marketing Manager at Nutanix. Chris, thanks for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. I know you've got a great presentation lined up for us today. Let me go ahead and hand control over to you, Chris.
So you should be able to see my screen now.
There we go. Perfect. Perfect. I see it. I want to make sure I can see everything. I know you've got some cool diagrams here coming up. So awesome. All right, take it away, Chris.
All right, thank you. So today we're going to be talking about supercharging your Oracle Database Workloads on Nutanix and what that entails. So essentially we're going to be walking through like the benefits of hyperconverged infrastructure and how that relates to improving your database workloads and in terms of speed and performance and availability, and how that relates to like the traditional legacy architecture that of doing that. And then we're also going to be talking about database as a service in the form of Nutanix Era, and how that saves time, money, and provides standardization and just all around benefits that we provide as for an Oracle solution platform. From a Nutanix standpoint. So while we jump in, before we jump into the goodness of that, what I want to walk through are some of the problems that DBAs and infrastructure administrators are feeling, the pains that they're feeling today. When we're talking about legacy technologies, they're essentially hurting the database because, one, they're complex. There's a lot of time spent on maintenance, and that time spent on maintenance is time away from working on projects or moving the business forward or line of business activities. We had a large customer, valpak, where they were working multiple weekends at a time. There weren't weekends off, and they were burning through cycles and burning through teams, just doing traditional maintenance upgrades. So once they finished one maintenance upgrade, it'd be right back to the next one. And so their maintenance, they were blowing past maintenance windows at times, and so it meant that they were working weekends. And with us, they found that they were able to not only shorten those maintenance windows and have availability, but they were actually able to deploy their dev and test Oracle database environments 10 times faster than they were before. The other big one, that actually the priority for most operations, is how fast their databases are, right? And in terms of when they're providing services to their customers, which could be the end user running their tier 1, tier 0 application, or their customer could be the application developer that's working on a project to take to market. If that's slow, if it's slow to even run that, then the end user experience is very poor. That means that people aren't happy. And then on the flip side of that, on just not just performances, how fast are we able to react to the demands of the business? So as requests come in, are you able to quickly turn around that database, spin it up and spin it down? And so a third of companies actually complain that their databases are too slow and that they can't meet these SLAs. It's a very common problem. Kazakhstan Telecom actually, they were having availability problems where they were actually falling on top of themselves when they were hitting their peak usage needs that their environment couldn't keep up. And the only fix was that to do a forklift upgrade and take an outage to upgrade their entire environment. With us, they were able to obtain a high availability solution for all their applications and workloads, and they were able to get the speeds that they needed for their tier 0 and tier 1 applications. So because you're taking downtime with outages or unplanned outages or maintenance windows that go too long, it leaves you very vulnerable. One thing that we find is that 80% of outages are due to a mistake made by human error. So the longer these maintenance windows are happening, the more the chance goes up that just these manual tasks that are abundant in database operations and rollouts, that there's an error that's going to be occur during this time. And then 50% of outages occur during a change configuration and release integration. So it's a very high probability that you're going to have a longer than average outage time. And so when we kind of add these things up, what we find is that there's $7,900 per minute of cost and impact. And then on average, companies endure 97 hours of database downtime per year, which is not trivial. Again, the Lenore City Utilities Board was having a problem where they were having problems hitting their uptime and availabilities that the business required. They turned to us and they were able to consolidate their environment and then reduce that downtime to do upgrades, because we are software, and roll it out much quicker and make themselves available so they weren't negatively impacting productivity. Then finally, the big thing that always pops up, it's very expensive with legacy technologies, because what you have is a very complex environment. It's wasted IT resources. It's very common to have multiple teams trying to figure out what an issue is, from the storage team to the infrastructure team to the DBA team and the application team, pointing fingers and trying to find out what the root cause of the situation is. And then on top of that, just the way the architecture is laid out and built, there's multiple copies of databases out there. So not only is it expensive in resource time and then time to resolution, it's also expensive in terms of storage costs and compute costs that are wasted because of a bunch of siloed infrastructure environments where it's dedicated compute or dedicated SAN storage to individual applications and databases. So what do? The problem that we keep talking about is legacy, and to take a step back, what we mean by legacy infrastructure or traditional infrastructure is separate storage, separate servers, virtualization, and it's all kind of set together. And because of that setup, you just by the nature of it, you are having these siloed pods that are dedicated to ensure that you have the environment that you need to hit SLAs or hit performance. So this is strife to having a very expensive environment that's over provisioned. It's sitting there using up cycles. You're paying for licensing that you don't need because you've made a very large capital expenditure that is supposed to last 4 years. And you got to make sure that not only that you can last those 4 years in terms of capacity, but also performance as well. So it's just over provision, which leads to it being complex and vulnerable, all the pain points that we talked about before. So what we do is to modernize that, Nutanix takes like scalable infrastructure platform, in other words, hyperconverged infrastructure, where we collapse that all down, where you don't have discrete, compute and storage and networking and virtualization. We collapse that all down and add a database as a service on top of that. And that leads to the benefits of being very simple to use. You have a single pane of glass, a single point of truth of managing, monitoring, and running operations, running automation. It's very fast, it's very intuitive, it's not complex, and it's cost effective because you're pay as you grow kind of capacity. Essentially what we're doing is taking the benefits of the cloud and putting it in off premises. So fast provisioning, fractional consumption, endless scalability, all the benefits that you want, but with the benefits of being on your environment in your data center. And so databases are able to benefit from that type of infrastructure. But we still have challenges. So what we find out is that 82% of organizations have more than 10 copies of each database. On the surface, that doesn't seem like much, but when you add to that multiple databases exist. So in other words, if you have 200 databases in production, and then each of those production databases has 10 copies, it quickly adds up. And so this leads to, by 2020, an estimated cost of $56 billion in what we call copy data costs. So that's because it's sitting on expensive SAN storage that's been over-provisioned, underutilized, that requires forklift upgrades, and those costs quickly add up. And then what we find as well is because of this lack of automation, lack of flow, these manual tasks, provisioning of a database can take hours, days, weeks, and involve multiple teams. And like I said, if you're having to set up a net new server, a database server, you're going through a storage team, you're going through a compliance team, you're going through infrastructure team, as well as on top of that, making sure that the DBA and the application team are all on board and checking on that. So there's a lot of change off of hands and a lot of time lost. So you're not definitely moving at the speed of business. So when we talk about the Nutanix differentiators for Oracle databases, what are those when we're kind of jumping in? And so just at a high level, the three things I want you to remember is that we have an enhanced time to value and business agility. So in other words, linear scaling. There's no more forklift upgrades. There's just pay-as-you-grow consumption and one-click database management. And what we mean by one-click database management is that we have the automation, the availability of it in several clicks and just single one-off clicks. Instead of having to do 50 to 100 manual steps, you can go into the same uniform interface and manage that database, or the infrastructure that runs that database, and then delegate that off as well, right? So very easy to do, very easy to run. Maximize uptime and security. We're addressing those issues of where a database is not all the time available, whether it's an unplanned outage because of a production issue or an error, or because of a maintenance window that's gone too long, or manual tasks that that have human error that makes the database go down. And we're also able to address the operational efficiency and reducing costs from that built-in database automation quickly, and building in standardization and automation, and then getting rid of all the different versions of that copy data that's eating up all the storage. We're able to save money and infrastructure costs as well as licensing. So we're able to reduce database licensing costs by as much as 2x. And we did this with an American healthcare provider that rolled us in, and they were able to cut us in half. And that was several different ways. The first way that we'll talk about is by getting rid of the database silos and the over provisioning. And so that's one way that they were able to do it. A little bit later on, we'll talk about some things that are best practices on Nutanix that can help in reducing additional licensing costs as well. But just by changing up your infrastructure and moving to Nutanix, we're able to slash that cost in terms of unused and unnecessary database licensing. So we're able to slash your storage capex by as much as 6x, and that's from different ways as well. So it's, again, unused storage, removing these storage silos, and then the copy data management efficiency that we have, where if you have one production database that's 100 terabytes in size, or 50 terabytes in size, and then you have 10 copies of that, you're not multiplying that by 10x. We're able to take these zero-cost clones, or zero-cost, non-interruptible snapshots via Nutanix Era, and make replicas of that data across the board, and it plugs right into our own storage API very easily. And then finally, we increased your database administrator's efficiency by reducing OpEx by as much as 2/3. And what do we mean by that is we're doing more with less. The DBA is constantly over provisioning the work that he has. They are constantly putting out fires, as well as asked to spin up new projects. And so we're able to take a lot of those manual tasks and automate them and provide standardization in that. So we're giving them the ability to get out of the firefighting business and into the business of building data centers and addressing the line of business needs that their business requires. So if anybody's seen this before, what we talk about in provisioning and how we address it is like the traditional provisioning process is arduous, it's long. We've talked about all the different areas he has to touch, and if you've ever gone through this process before, like I have, it's a painful process, and the slide itself, it just kind of brings chills to you when you look at it. And because it involves just a lot of friction and complex processes and touch points that lowers the productivity level of a database administrator, as well as whoever's involved with that. So again, this is the traditional way of rolling out a database. What we give with Nutanix Era is we're able to kind of roll out one-click provisioning that across for Oracle or multiple different databases. We're also able to support SQL, MySQL as well. And we're able to automate this and standardize this to a gold image. So this way, as you're rolling out to dev, test, and prod, you're not having different versions of the database rollout. You're able to also control your copy data management through the ability to plug into the APIs and reduce the amount of storage being used and being able to manage those versions of the database across dev, test, and production. Again, we have self-service deployment and management. We have patching in the newest version that came out for Oracle. So now these patch levels that are all over the place for database instances, you can actually line them up, and we'll jump into it more, but you're able to actually keep the patch sprawl under control and then actually promote to production as you've tested out and validated those in your test environment as well. So essentially what we're doing at this point is we're taking the cloud-like abilities that their infrastructure counterparts have been experiencing for 10 years with Nutanix, and we brought that and made the DBA and the application owner first-class citizen in the environment by providing them those same like cloud abilities through database as a service. Again, we're talking about using common APIs for multiple database engines, using custom software images for tailor-made enterprise needs. And at this point, when you deploy these, you're able to also add pre and postscript database insertions. So you're able to, if you want to do some sort of subnet masking or additional tasks, you're able to modify it as needed. No matter if you're running Oracle or PostgreSQL, MariaDB, or SQL Server, if you delegate this off to another group, such as a dev team, a DevOps team, to spin up and spin down their databases, you can give them those rights and abilities to do that. And then when they do that, they're able to, regardless of which database they're spinning up, they're getting the same UI and the same functionality when they go through Era, regardless of which database they're rolling out as well. And then to add to that, even complex HA environment support is available through this, such as Oracle RAC is able to be deployed through Era. We have functionality called Time Machine, and what this gives us is a ability to roll back to any point in time with Nutanix snapshots to do point in time incremental restores. So what we do is collect database logs, and then we recover those and roll them back. So if we wanted to go back to August 29th, we're able to roll back to that point in time efficiently and easily. If you wanted to test, use case would be if you wanted to test an issue that happened right after something occurred, you can roll that back very easily. Or if you wanted to have a version of the database that you knew was working and you wanted to roll that version out for testing or for a new project that was rolling out, you can take that and take those snapshots and deploy it. You could also do that with a clone as well. So we have one-click database cloning and refresh. So the same idea with time travel, same idea with our provisioning, very easy, non-interruptive. It's very easy, intuitive to use, and we don't have any problems where they're non-interruptive, they're not quiescing the original server at all. They're very fast and very small in nature, so they're not taking up a lot of space in your environment when you take up these clones as well. And then we have the ability to do one-click database backups with our database as a service. So again, using our snapshot technology, we liken it to how easy it is to copy and paste operations on your computer. We believe that these operations should be that simple for databases that are terabytes in size. For Oracle databases, for instance, the requirement is not just to copy and paste a particular instance, but the ability to create clones from any point in time. With Nutanix Era Time Machine technology, we power the one-click database copy and paste operations from any point in time, while still maintaining the quality of service for specific SLAs. So essentially, Era lifecycle services for databases. And then finally, what's new and what just rolled out for Oracle is we have one-click patch management. So we're delivering out-of-place patching automation. We're controlling patch sprawl. So, you know, one of the biggest pain points of a DBA is keeping up with the database patches and updates. We're able to eliminate database config and version sprawl, and introduce standardization for patching, and able to see what versions of the databases are in the environment today. So if you go look today, if you were to look in your environment today, is there an easy way to see which version in a single view each of your database instances are patched up to? Especially even for the same application set, are you running the same database patches on your production and test and dev all the way through to ensure that you're going to have the same experience when you roll it out? With Era, we're able to provide that. And then we're also able to provide, as new patches roll out, you can deploy that in your test environment and then promote that, or publish that to your production when you feel confident to roll that out. And so the DBA has a choice to automatically schedule and update a group of targeted databases with this as well. So just as a recap of what we talked about, there's 3 areas that we deliver value for Oracle databases. That's the ability to provide enhanced time to value or business agility. So aka deploying minutes. By deploying minutes, we're able to accelerate test and dev by up to 10x in some customers. Maximize uptime and security. By that we mean we're slashing downtime by up to 97%, and then we provide one-click DR simplicity. We're also able, from the patching that we just talked about, ensure that you get in the best patches possible, most update patches possible, so you're not leaving your databases open to security vulnerability threats that have just come out. And then operational efficiency and reduce costs. So we're able to reduce TCO by as much as 60% by streamlining those DBA operations. And then the cost of infrastructure costs that are associated with that twofold. So OpEx and CapEx we're able to reduce and make it more efficient for the DBAs and the teams to answer to the speed of business. So when we're talking about Oracle specifically, we have a simplified Oracle database layout. Nutanix enables the ability to simplify the Oracle database through, in this case, in this diagram, we have 2 Oracle ASM disk groups where each disk group contains 1 or more Nutanix disks. And then with Nutanix as a whole, we don't have the concept of RAID. So we're truly, when we talk about web scale, our DNA is made from actually like web distributed computing or internet distributed computing that you would see in AWS or a Google compute data center. So we're not taking things that were existing off the shelf. And because of this, we're able to come up quicker. We don't have downtime. We don't have performance issues if you lose something with the RAID set. And also because we don't suffer from the same performance issues from having RAID groups that you might have with traditional environments. So when we talk about enhanced time to value at any scale, we're able to scale out as needed. So if your environment starts off small, you're able to scale out your databases without any drop off, or that you would with a traditional system. As you fill it up, say like a SAN array, you may have diminishing returns. With us, you just keep on scaling out. You add a node which includes compute resources as well as storage resources, and then you're able to just plug and play and go. Now, in some instances, maybe you don't need that. You just need storage, and you don't want to add compute resources that would require you to have additional Oracle licensing. In that case, we do have storage-only nodes that run on our hypervisor. And so this way, these storage-only nodes that do not run Oracle software and only run Nutanix HV, this is a unique offering from Nutanix that eliminates the licensing for storage-only nodes while enabling customers to start smaller and only add licensing as required. And so it's not required if you just need that storage, in other words, to buy Oracle licensing for those nodes as you add on. So what does this mean as you pay as you grow out performance or fractional consumption? The hard benefits of this are better utilization of your servers. You have licensing consolidation because of that. So we have intelligent tiering and data locality. In other words, that we have the ability to keep all data local to that VM that's sitting on a particular node, so it's not having to traverse the wire, so you have better performance than a higher density node on traditional 3-tier architecture. That in turn creates reduced infrastructure integration costs, so we're more of a turnkey solution. Reduced TCO. We have built-in functionality such as data protection and disaster recovery that's just built into the product. We have compression, which eliminates the need for external solutions and third-party software-related integration costs. And then finally, you have the ability to mix and match different nodes. The ability to mix and match these different node types from compute heavy to all flash to storage heavy means that you can actually predict your costs, what you're running into based on your workload versus just having to do just these large CapEx purchases and install and just letting them sit there and idle while they cost you money. From a soft benefit point of view, we have improved admin DBA productivity, right? So again, we're getting out of the business of fighting fires and focusing what is the most important task at hand. And then we provide customized dashboards and effective metrics and tools from like the single pane of glass of Prism or the Era dashboard that allows the admins to go in and address what they need and provision very quickly or delegate that off so they can focus on bigger and better things. We have improved performance, again, coming back to the data locality and automatic tiering that we have. Eliminates the noisy neighbor problem, so you can have mixed workloads and not have a problem with them stepping on each other. We have automation. You have Era automation, where we have the APIs that plug in. We also have application or automation as well through a product called Calm that you can deploy through blueprints and blow out these applications and then call on Era to actually deploy to best practices and standards your Oracle database. And then we have a simplified database storage layout and reduced trouble tickets that help in kind of resolving and hitting SLAs. So the big one that comes to everybody's mind is like reduced Oracle licensing costs. So how do we do that? So we talked about at the beginning of the presentation of just how the inherent infrastructure benefits of removing silos and the fractional consumption of only paying for what you need at that point and reducing the excess to nothing sitting there and reducing it that way. The other way that we do it when we're speccing these environments coming in is that what we try to do is choose a CPU with the highest clock rate and balance the number of cores and balance with NUMA. So always respect NUMA. I think that goes across the board with anything you're doing, but you pay a price, especially from database workloads, if you don't respect the NUMA boundaries. And then right sizing the VM. Because more is better is a mantra that not just admins run into, but DBAs run into. We're trying to get more and more resources, and there's a cost associated with that, especially when moving from physical. They try to keep it like to like, and there's an overhead cost associated with that, and that's not always the case. So the key here is to know your workloads, know what you're doing with that box, know what your baselines are, have the metrics associated with this. Obviously, right size doesn't mean to always reduce the amount that you need. Sometimes applications, especially databases, are performance starved. So you go put them on a net new infrastructure that just doesn't have any limits on it, and it's going to grab more than you ever had before. That's definitely something that we've seen as well, where it's hit this arbitrary ceiling because they've hit the performance capabilities of a particular SAN or of that older server infrastructure that they were on, and then they jump on something new. And before they add anything else on, they've just consumed twice as many IOPS, and latency has dropped considerably. So it goes both ways. Just make sure that you're aware of what is running and what is attached to those databases. Licensed vCPUs for smaller footprints, and then also there's affinity rules to limit the number of licensed hosts that you have. Especially as a case, so if you're in a cluster of 3 or more, a Nutanix cluster, and you want to place affinity rules to where the database instance is always on a particular server and it's not moving around, that is important, especially anybody who's had an Oracle audit where some nasty audits have popped up, because now they have to do everything in that cluster if that virtual database server is moving off that single node onto those other instances in the cluster. So one thing I do want to go over real quick is just, again, we talked quickly and I quoted some of the benefits of valpak, of what they did when they rolled us out. and they were using a full HCI stack. They were using VMware on top of us. It was Oracle, Microsoft SQL, SAP, Java app servers, and they experienced 10x faster deployment. That's rolling deployment of database instances and the associated application servers to their dev and test environment. They actually had a noticeable 8x performance improvement in their database servers. And then equally as impressive, they were able to cut monthly management time from 180 hours to just 2 hours. Again, so if they're reducing the amount of the footprint of their infrastructure and the complexity of that, that just inherently solves a lot of the time and problems that they have. And then when it comes to upgrades, it should be as easy as upgrading your iPhone or your iPad, right? It should be intuitive, and you should just get the newest features when they come through, and that's what we do, because we are a software-based infrastructure software. So we are not a hardware company. So when we do have updates, it's a software update that's not supposed to be taking any downtime. So there's no forklift upgrades to get the new features. So just a couple things before we end this one that I want to kind of jump into is some what we call hot tips. We went over some of these, but just to kind of recap, using the correct type of hardware is critical for a successful deployment. The CPU type has a direct relationship with performance and licensing. Again, more cores is not always better, and more cores will definitely be more expensive. Taking into account the memory performance, 768 gigs of RAM can work at 2400 megahertz, but 1 terabyte means 1866. And then make sure you don't impose any artificial limits on the hardware by using energy saving features. That is true also of virtualization. You don't want to enable those as well, and you definitely don't want to do that to your production database servers. That will kind of artificially limit the performance that it has. And then some storage tips, IOPS and latency throughput, all important metrics and all uses when used without any correlation. So if you're looking at IOPS and latency, I've heard the term used a lot, and cringeworthily too. I've used the term IOPS are king, and that's not always the case. I would argue that latency is the more defining factor when it comes to end user experience of who's using that application or who's using that database, who's running those reports, whether it's an analysis type of thing or just a relational database. Latency is equal, if not more than important when you're looking at that. So use it in relation to what your workloads are. Also, sometimes by raising some IOPS, so if you're in legacy infrastructure, if you're attached to a fiber channel SAN and you're going in and tweaking things like the HBAQ length to get more IOPS, that actually in turn can reduce increase the latency. So actually by increasing IOPS, you're actually making it slower on the back end for the customer. So we want, another tip, we want the database to live in the hot tier. We want it to be a lead with all flash. Avoid hybrid if possible. We have customers that run hybrid and they're fine, but again, know your workload. If you use hybrid, use a platform with plenty of spindles. But if it's a tier 1, tier 0 database server, we do recommend all flash as well. Enable inline compression is an option. Again, that's a built-in feature. Compression is the feature that just comes in Nutanix, but so is erasure coding. But we don't recommend, in fact, we tell you do not turn on erasure coding for database workloads, as well as deduping. So dedupe is another feature that's built into the product. Tons of benefits for dedupe, just not for database workloads. So do not put that on. That will affect performance. So just as kind of a wrap up, one thing I want to go over, we have plenty of resources out there. We have an Oracle on Nutanix Solutions site, nutanix.com/Oracle. We have business critical app site that you can go to as well. And then if you want to learn specifically about database as a service, that would be nutanix.com product/era that you have the availability to go to. So that concludes the presentation for today.
Great presentation, Chris. I learned a lot about running Oracle on Nutanix. Some very cool tips there. I especially appreciated that. I bet the audience did as well. We've got some good questions here that came in during the event. So you ready for some Q&A?
Sure.
Awesome, awesome. All right. If you're out there in the audience and you've got a question about Oracle or running Oracle workloads on Nutanix, now is the time because we have the expert here on the line. So make sure you get those questions in. First question that came in here is, do you know if Oracle accepts licensing based on affinity rules?
Yeah, so we do have customers running affinity rules, but again, it just depends on the use case, and it's something that we get an SC working on. But yes, we do. I've seen it, and I constantly am in contact with our solutions engineering teams that work with them, and they do architect that out. They can set up those use cases where they set up affinity rules.
Okay. Okay, good. Another question here, they're asking, what does this look like at the operating system layer? I think they're talking about, the hypervisor in regards to patch management. Does Nutanix provide operating system updates as well for the OS updates?
Not at this time. So what we do provide is from the hypervisor level, we can roll out, especially if you're using AHV, which is our hypervisor, we can roll out the updates and the upgrades as they come along. And then definitely with the new features with Nutanix Era, we're able to handle it from a database instance, database server level. But from the OS level and beyond, that's something that we don't have yet.
Okay. And then another question here, John is asking, do you do licenses based on vCPUs with Oracle?
Let me get back to you on that one.
Okay.
I will.
All right.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Another question here is this certified by Oracle?
So we are a gold partner by Oracle. We are actually partnered, and we have a new partnership that more details will be coming out, where it's like Linux running, it's Linux and Oracle together running on Nutanix, and we are a gold certified partner. We have been for quite a while. A lot of times though, there is some pushback, just like all the other people that run Oracle, they're very specific on what Oracle will run on. But at the end of the day, it will work. For the longest time, they push back on, and they still do up until just recently. There's been some news if it runs in the cloud, but even like vSphere, just running it on vSphere, they want you to run it on their hypervisor and their servers and their hardware and their bare metal. But at the end of the day, it's supported. It's fine.
Nice, nice. Okay. Another question here. What about doing active Oracle RAC? Is that possible?
So yeah, in fact, on one of the slides, what we do, we have multiple customers running Oracle RAC on us, and then even with Era, we're able to simplify a very complex deployment, such as active Oracle RAC. We're able to do that with Era as well, and so kind of be able to roll it out best practices and reduce a lot of the manual steps in there. We're able to do as well.
Excellent. Nice. Okay. Next question here. These benefits you talked about, do they only apply to the Nutanix hypervisor AHV, or would they apply to vSphere as well?
No, they would apply to vSphere as well. I will say that one of the additional benefits that we're able to provide when it comes to licensing and saving costs is that just like we talked about features that come and the benefits that are just inherent that come with the product, our hypervisor we feel just should be included. Like it should just be a part of it. Should not be something you think about. And so with that, we don't charge any licensing. So it'll definitely work with vSphere, but we have a lot of customers that are, as they've rolled on or they first tried us with vSphere, if they were very pro vSphere, they love what we do and they dip their toe in the waters, and then it's just one less licensing cost that they have to think about at the end of the day and pay for. And so they migrate their workloads over to HV as they start doing data center modernization projects.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Moving on here. Got a lot of good questions. The next question, does Nutanix offer any performance and capacity monitoring solutions for, if I were to run Oracle on the Nutanix cluster?
So we do, like Era, you're able to get metrics, and within Prism, you're able to get like baselines and some advanced analytics on prediction, like what's coming up in prediction modeling on resources used. At the end of the day, a DBA is still going to leverage a lot of their own tools in terms of like they're going to use for instance, Oracle, they're going to use the same tools from Oracle that they always have, but they're able to incorporate a lot of the features just like with Era and those dashboards and in their decision-making process. We do have some stuff kind of come down the line in terms of monitoring, where it's more of in addition to like Prism, in addition to the dashboards provided by Era, we're able to provide like, map out where what's all the connections to an environment. And that's a separate product that we have, but we're able to map out, for instance, a use case could be if you're migrating an environment from one data center to other and you don't know what you don't know and you're trying to figure out what's attached to this application server or this database server. It'll go out and map it all out for you and show you all the connections, the type of traffic, and the type of applications that are running on that environment, and map that out for you, and then tell you what type of traffic is traversing between those servers.
Very cool. Yeah, that sounds very helpful, especially in migrations. Now, so here's a rather long, perhaps technical question. We may need to get back to Ian on this, but I'll just throw it out here because I thought it's a pretty complex question, and I'm sure you can handle it one way or the other. On traditional VMware, we found database disk latency around Oracle databases due to the preference of using as few data stores to the all-flash SAN as possible. Does Nutanix do anything differently to provide better disk latency times than traditional VMware infrastructure for Oracle databases around disk I/O?
Yeah, we do, and like the short answer to that is like we are a completely different architecture, and like one point in that is that we don't have like things like RAID, and we have things that are unique to us, like such as data locality. In other words, if your database server is sitting on virtual server 1, it'll then try to keep all that data local to that server, so it's not traversing to like node 2 or node 3, so it's quick access, so you just reduce the latency time there, and it's very fast. And we try to make sure that even then making sure it's all flash is part of that. But there's also other ways in terms of how we break out the log files and how those are distributed across and the actual implementation. But I would like to point you in, like what I can do after this is point you to some of the best practices that we have in terms of carving that up to ensure that you have the best performance, and that some of that's in our best practice guides. We have best practice guides for Oracle and for any other databases that you're running on Nutanix for multiple versions of it. And they're all being kept up to date. We have technical notes as well. And if it's anything beyond that, like a unique case, we can put you in touch with the right person as well to kind of see what that environment is and kind of walk through that a little bit more piecemeal.
Okay, excellent. Let's see, another question here. I mean, if I'm running Oracle today and I'm interested in doing this, where do I start? What do you recommend?
Can you repeat that?
Where do you recommend that we get started? If somebody's running Oracle today and they're interested in running on Nutanix, where should they start?
So one of the things is quite easily, one of the things that you could do is we have the ability, if you go to Nutanix.com, we have different case studies and portals you can jump into if you want to kick the tires as well. We have the ability to check out what these applications, like if you just want to see what it looks like and kind of walk through the steps of being in Prism, we have that ability, and doing like a test drive just by going to the website. After that, I was just reaching out to us through the website, and then we could do next steps. And even if it comes to a point of like what's your proof of concept is, or what is your use case, and kind of moving that over, what are all the components of that, and then we can give an idea through an SC and a sales team then to like this is what you'll need, and kind of a bill of materials and what to expect.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so tons of resources right there on the screen. You can work with your local SC, Nutanix on YouTube, case studies, reference architectures. We've got the handout available for download there in GoToWebinar on how to unlock the value of data with simplified data management. So tons of resources if you're running Oracle and you're interested in getting off legacy infrastructure. Now's the time to do it, and Nutanix has got a great solution. This has been really educational. We've received tons of questions. I'm pleasantly surprised at all the great technical questions that came in. We may have to get back to some of these after the event. But Chris, it's been really great having you on the event today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to Nutanix for supporting today's event. Before we go, I want to award the $300 Tango gift card that's going to Scott Fast of North Carolina. Congratulations. We'll reach out to deliver that gift card. I want to thank everyone for joining today's event. If you'd like more information, please visit Nutanix.com and have a great day.
Thank you.
See you next time. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Bye-bye.